Hi everyone, it's Aga from EurekaCrystalBeads.com and I'm here with another fun beading tutorial for you. Before I get started, as always, quick reminder to check out the rest of our channel, and if you like what you see, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you always know when we're posting new content. In today's video, I will be showing you one way to use our new product, which is Cork Leather. We have it in several different colors. Here I have this beautiful dark brown with kind of rainbow pieces. It has these metallic accents that are colorful in this natural brown color. And I really like it, so I thought I would feature it in a way so that it's like the star of the show. Well, maybe apart from the crystal, but I think you can use it in various different ways like this, where you can make a bracelet with like just one stone, and the cork is really the star of the show. So I'm going to be showing you how to make this. It's really simple if you think about it, because it's just a regular standard peyote bezel and some embroidered crystals around it, and basically that's it. So we have 2 layers of this cork leather. So that's the primary ingredient of this pendant. Apart from this, you're going to need a crystal. And here I have this beautiful kind of greenish and bluish crystal. It's a really large one. It's 16 millimeters, and this color is called Sphinx. So it's kind of color changing, I would say. That's why I chose 2 colors of bicone beads, and they both have this AB effect. These are more greenish and these are more bluish, but if you only have one color, that will be alright. I just like the way they interchangeably like shimmer around the stone. So for the bezel, you're also going to need Toho treasures. Here's what I have, or Miyuki Delicas, that's what I would recommend, and some 15-ohs. Here I have these 15-ohs to match the color of the crystal, but kind of pop as well, so that it has a nice little crown. Of course, you're going to need a needle. Here I have size 12 needle, size 11 or 10 even, I think, would be quite okay. And 2 shades of 1G thread. You can obviously only use 1 shade, I have 2, because this one I'm going to use to make the edge, because I'm a still perfectionist and I just need everything to look so nice. And as you can see here, the thread is kind of visible, so I just wanted to have this aesthetic effect with this darker shade of green. And the lighter one is so that the greenish crystals, the greenish bicones, kind of don't get a little bit darker from the thread inside of them, because they're somewhat see-through. So I just want the color of thread to match them better, so that they don't turn more blue with this thread. Okay, the last thing we're going to need, well, when it comes to essentials, is glue, and here I will be using the E6000 glue. You can also use other glues if you prefer, just not the quick drying ones, because they will be too stiff. So for bead embroidery, I typically use this. To draw the template, I'm also going to show you that. I'm going to be using this cardstock or paperboard, just something that's a little bit stiffer than regular paper, but something that you can still cut out shapes out of. And the last little thing that I'm going to be using to set this stone on top of the cork leather so that it stays straight and is ready for bezeling. So I'm going to be using this piece of just regular beading foundation or felt. This is just enough to fit the stone twice, because we're going to do 2 layers of that. Okay, maybe apart from that, if you have compasses, that will be very useful. If not, you can use something that has a round cap, like night cream or lotion or something like that. And well, you're also going to need something to draw. And I'm using a felt tip pen because we're going to have to draw on the cork leather. So you're going to need maybe not a thick marker, but definitely not pencil, because it's not going to show. Okay, let's start. The first thing I'm going to do is actually set the stone, because as it sets, I can later draw the template and it's going to be mostly dry. So first thing I do is I cut this piece of foundation in two so that I have 2 layers to put my stone on. I poke a little hole in this and I cut out a circle that is a little bit smaller than the diameter of the stone. Okay, so you want something more or less like this, so that when you put it against your stone, it's more or less flat. So that's one piece of foundation with a hole. So I'm going to glue it to my stone in the way that I just put a thin layer of glue on the stone, not in the center because that's where the hole is, but just a thin layer of glue around it. You don't have to worry about being exact because this is going to be bezeled around anyways. So if you don't put enough glue, that's okay. Alright, so this one will be kind of waiting as I poke a hole in my other piece of beading foundation. And this time I'm going to cut out a hole that is slightly smaller, so that, you know, just the point of the point back stone is going to be protruding a little bit less, so that the surface is more or less even, and I can glue it onto the cork leather. Alright, that will be it. So I can just glue it on. For this, I just put a ring of glue around the center here. Again, I'm not being very exact. I'm not putting very much glue over there because it just needs to hold together as you cut it out of this foundation in a second. And this is basically how you set point back bezel. It's easiest with Rivolis because you don't have to like cut out various shapes. And there you basically have a cabochon. I'm just going to later cut the excess off. And it's going to be a flat back cabochon. Okay, I'm gonna let it dry. And in the meantime, I'm going to draw a template that we're going to use to cut out 2 pieces of cork leather to match the shape that we want. You can of course use any shape that you want. You can make it round, you can make it triangular, you can make it whatever you want. I'm going to make this kind of pretty, I don't know, what's this shape? It's not a teardrop. I don't know, tell me, it's a rounded diamond kind of. Okay, so we're also going to need a ruler. And what you do, you basically draw a straight line. This is going to be the middle of our pendant. You just take a small piece and you draw a line, maybe a little bit of a longer line. Okay, I'm marking the center. And now it's time to draw a circle. And I'm measuring 1 inch for that particular design that I will be making. Like that. So that's 1 inch. Again, you don't have to be exact. This is not gonna like ruin your work if you do too much or too little. It's just going to change the shape. Okay, here's my circle. I'm just measuring 1/2 inch on each side. And now you can either wing it and just draw these arches or curved lines just like that, or you can see from that point to that edge of the circle. And I'm just gonna put a dotted line over here, another one over here, this is what I'm going to use to draw these kind of slightly curved lines like that. The reason I'm not only drawing half of it, because it's another way to do it. I could draw a half and then transfer that half and trace it on my cork leather, but I'm not going to do that. And then, you know, flip it and trace the other half. I'm not going to do that because I'm going to actually use the shape to make the pendant stiffer later. Okay, the other side. Okay, so this is my shape. I'm just gonna cut it off from this rest of the paper. And now what I need to do is just cut it out, trying to be as smooth as I can with the lines. Now I can look at it from the back, see if it's more or less even. I'm gonna cut off the sharp tips a little bit because it's going to be easier to trace. I'm just evening it out so that it looks better. Alright, now what you need to do is to poke a hole. I'm gonna do it with my compasses. I'm poking a hole in the center so that I know where to glue my crystal later on. Okay, let's trace it on the cork. And here I have a little bit of pretty green. So this is where my front is going to be. I can see some purple, so actually I could have used some more purplish crystals. That would be nice. But I think that green in here will be enough to make it all pretty and match with the crystals and the bicones and everything. Okay, so now I'm just using my felt tip pen to trace this on the cork. There, and I also mark the center so that I know where the crystal is going. And I also have to trace it the second time because this is going to be the back. Might have guessed. Now we're going to cut them out. Another good thing about cork leather is that it doesn't fray. It won't fray if you cut it, so you don't need to worry, and you can just cut off and cut out your shapes as you go. Okay, here I have my two pieces of cork. This will be the front, and this will be the back. If you want to, you can even make it like reversible and double-sided. You can put something on this side and something on this side. Or you can even not put anything if you like the cork, and I really like it. Okay, so as you can see, the felt tip pen colored my fingers, so I'm just going to wash it off. Wait a second for this to dry completely, and then come back to you with the next step. Okay, now that this is more or less dried, it's been about half an hour, I can cut off the excess foundation. So what I do is I first cut off chunks around the stone. I'm not too exact about this. Okay, now I can get in with some more detailed cutting. Alright, now you don't want to cut out too much because we want it to resemble like a cabochon, and a cabochon does not just go straight down at the edge, it has like this rounded, softer edge, so that's why I'm leaving a tiny little bit outside of the outline of the stone, and that will be alright. And now it's time to just glue it to the cork leather. And again, I'm just putting a small amount of glue on the bottom, again, just to hold it together for the time as we bezel it with beads, and then the beads are going to hold it in place. What I do is I just fold it, aim towards the center, and squeeze. Again, I'm going to wait about maybe half an hour to an hour for this to get a little bit dry. And I'm gonna come back with the bezeling. Okay guys, this has dried. We can go on to bezeling. So I'm putting on my darker thread for this because it matches better with the 15-0s. And I would recommend using a little bit less than half a wingspan of thread because it's just for the bezel, and remember you can always add on more thread as you go. Now for those of you who already know how to bezel with peyote stitch, you can feel free to just skip to the next step, and for those who don't know it yet, this is just a brief recap of how you do it because it's very easy. So you pick up 2 Toho treasure beads or Miyuki and Eureka beads, and you put them down on the leather, roughly where they will fall as they line up one next to the other, and you go back in between them to then go back through the last one. And you just continue to do that until you've made a full circle around the crystal. So I'm adding 2 and I'm going to be going back through 1. That's the first row. And now for the second row, I'm going to pick up 1 treasure bead, skip one of these beads in the first row, and just add this bead here. And this is what I'm going to be doing for the second row and third and fourth, because this is how many rows we're going to be doing. And on to row 3. I don't know if I mentioned, but you're supposed to have 20 pairs of Toho treasures or Miyuki Delikas around 16mm Rivoli. That's going to be just an optimal amount. Alright, that's row 3. And it's a big stone, so we're going to need 1 more row. Alright, so this is the end of the 4th row. I'm just gonna step up the last time. And now it's time to add the 15-0s. And this time I'm going to be trying to pull tight with every 15-0. And then I'm going to go through all of them once more once I'm done with this row. So you do just the same, adding 1 15-0 in the gaps between the beads. And pulling. Don't pull too tight because your thread may break and rip. But you know, you just need to reinforce the hold once in a while. Okay, so I went through all of the 15-0s in the last row and the previous row of Toho treasures again to just make it nice and snug. And I'm just gonna go down through the Toho treasures to finish my thread and swap it for the other green one. So I'm just going through the cork, tying a double knot. And now I'm just going to use even less than half a wingspan, so just a bit of thread. Alright, now we're going to be adding the bicones around the crystal. So I'm starting wherever really, at some distance from the bezel. And I'm starting with 1 Toho treasure and 1 bicone. And I'm going to, you can slide them down your thread to see where they fall, and then you can just eyeball it. So around here, I'm stitching them to the cork, and I'm only going back through that second one, so through the bicone. And this is what I'm going to be doing throughout, all around the crystals. So one Toho treasure and one bicone. I'm going to alternate them, so now the more bluish one. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go back through the bicone because I want the treasures to be actually kind of hanging in the air. So they're not going to be attached to the cork. They're just going to be in between the bicones. So they're going to be floating a little bit because I don't want them to kind of get lost in between the bicones, you know? Because if we stitch them to the leather, to the cork, they could just get lost in between those beautiful bicones, and I want them to kind of separate them nicely, like that. Okay, so this is what I'm going to be doing all around, alternating my bicone colors. Okay, so that's it. In my case, it came to a really nice circle. I don't need to add any beads, and it's perfectly interchangeable, so one blue and green, one blue and green, and so on. But if you don't come around to like a perfect sequence, like if you still have space for a Toho treasure bead or something, really just do it. You can also start from like the middle towards the bottom or towards the top, and you can just make it seem like it was supposed to be there. Like if you end up with two Toho treasures next to one another, if they're like facing directly down, it's going to seem like they were supposed to actually be like that. So I'm just going to go through all of this once again just to make it a little bit stronger because I don't like having only one thread in a bead, and in these Toho treasures there's just one thread. So I'm just going through all of them again, and then I'll finish my thread and we're going to glue all the pendant together. Okay, now it's time to glue the front and the back together. And remember when we had this little template? Yeah, so now we can use it to actually make the pendant a little bit stiffer. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just going to cut off a little bit of a margin like this to make room for our like finishing stitch for like where we're going to make the beaded edge. So we want to make it a little bit smaller than the actual pendant, and the other side too. Alright. And let's glue it all together. First I'm going to put glue on that paper, on that cardstock. Quite a thin layer, just to get it to hold to the back of the cork leather. And now right away I'm going to put the glue on top of this other side of this cardstock to add on the back side of our cork. And I'm not putting any glue on that margin that I left because just it's a little bit more difficult to get through the glue with the needle, and it's going to be sewn together anyway, so we don't have to worry about that part on the edge that doesn't have any glue. One more thing, you can distribute your glue with an orange stick or a toothpick or anything that you have for this purpose. Just make sure that there is not too much glue because we don't want it to seep through the cork leather. Technically it shouldn't, but if you put really an extra large amount, of glue on there, it might. So let me just adjust these two together. And now again, we wait for the glue to dry up a little bit. Alright, everything is glued together. This is going to be my top. So I'm going to just cut off the very tip over here so that I can make this nice and convenient kind of a rounded edge to attach a jump ring or a bail or anything that you want to hang your piece from. You can also cut off all the unevenness that you have because there's going to be some. I already cut this all so that it's nice and even. So it's time to finish it off with a brick stitch with a little bit of a picot. For this, I'm going to be using a little bit more thread because I like doing everything in one thread, and when it comes to the edge, I don't like adding extra thread. So this is more than half a wingspan. It's not a full wingspan, I would say, but more than half a wingspan of thread. Again, melting the end. And I'm going to start here so that the two top beads fall exactly on that a little bit rounded point where they should fall. Okay, I'm just actually going to cut off in here as well so that I can fit one bead over here so that it also looks quite nice. Okay, so for those of you who already know how to finish an edge with brick stitch, you can just skip to the next step, which is basically the end of the tutorial. But for those of you who don't know how to finish an edge with brick stitch, or who don't know how to use a picot and how to make these tiny picots with 15-0s, it's very easy, but this is how you do it. So these two I'm actually going to add without any picots, because this is where we were going to attach a ring, the jump ring. So as you can see, I added two and I went up through that second one. So this is what it looks like. Now one more without a picot. So I'm picking up one Toho treasure bead. I'm coming in basically in the same place because this is going to go around this sharp angle. So I am putting the thread in through the leather, through the cork leather. Right there. Don't worry, this is gonna all even out as you go. Now for the picot. You simply pick up one 15-0 before you pick up the Toho treasure. So I have one 15-0 and one Toho treasure. I come in and this time I'm doing the edge looking from the front because I want the thread to line up nicely along the edge to add an extra aesthetic look to the entire piece. So the thing with picot, well, actually this one kind of slided a little bit to the side, but that's okay. Just my last bead is going to be the second one on top in this case, which is fine. Okay, so with the picot, you want to go slightly further away than you normally would with your needle. So normally maybe I would go in here because that's more or less one bead away. And in this case, I'm gonna go here because I want the picot to be like in between the beads and standing up nicely. So I'm going up through this Toho treasure bead like so. And there's the picot. So again, 1/15, 1 Toho treasure. And up through this bead, like so. Let me just show you again. You go through it like this. And you just continue on. You can only do the picot like every second bead for a different result. So there's still room for personalization and customization of your piece. Okay, I'm going to come back to you when I've finished doing the piece all around. Okay guys, almost done with the edge. Let me just add the last bead, and here I'm not going to put a picot to keep it symmetrical to the other side. And now I'm reaching for that first bead that I added and treating it as if that was the next bead that I wanted to add. So just going through and up through it as I normally would if I just added it. Now I'm going to use these two beads to make a loop, and I'm just going to do it the easy way. So I'm just going to put in a jump ring, and through it you can put in a cord to make a necklace or a chain like here. You can also take some craft wire and put some beads on it and then put it through a ring. If you have a pinch bail, especially a two-part one, you can just always pinch this because cork leather is quite malleable and soft, and it should work really well. So you can just pinch it with a pinch bail and that will be great. And here I have this antique copper plated jump ring, so I pick it up, and I also pick up 5 15-ohs. And I just go through the other of the two beads. Now I want to go through all of the beads like 2 more times just to make them a little bit more sturdy, but I also don't want to make a big mess with the thread here in the front of the pendant. So I just go straight in and up through the next bead. Just like that, and through all of the 15-ohs. And again through that Toho treasure in the beaded edge. Now I'm gonna go through in the back and back up. And now how do you end a thread if you don't have any beads in the front to weave it in? Well, this is how you do it. It's very simple, but it only works for synthetic threads. I just put it through the cork. I don't put it in the front, just like in between the layers, and come out in the back. I cut it off, leaving like just a tiny little bit. And what I do is exactly that. I just melt it in a way so that it kind of melts with the cork. Let me show you. And with my finger, I kind of flatten it down. There is this little dot in here in the middle, but I don't think it catches the eye or is in any way visible. But it's a secure way to finish your thread when you don't have any beads to weave it in through. So this is the pendant. And actually, I'm thinking maybe I will make them into earrings. What do you think? Are they too large? Would you wear earrings this large? Okay guys, this is the finished piece. I hope I've shown you how great it is and how easy and pleasant it is to work with cork leather, how nicely it can be incorporated into beading, especially bead embroidery, and how you don't really need many beads and much thing going on for it to look really nice and beautiful. And if you make a bracelet out of it, it will look very, very nice on the wrist and you won't have to stiffen it at all. So we also have different colors. We have this burgundy with gold, we have orange with gold, we have black with silver, and black with like a metallic black accents. So don't forget to check them out. They are linked down in the description, as well as all the other materials that I used today. So you can get them at eurekacrystalbeads.com. Thank you so much for watching this tutorial and see you in the next one. Bye!